Today's session, today's Women in Tech Leadership session is around shaping a fair future in AI. And I'm really looking forward to it, actually. I'm Lou. If you haven't met me before, we've got loads of new faces on the call today, so it's great news. I'm the recruitment director at Crimson. We are a boutique recruitment company in terms of the business we provide on the recruitment services. However, a big part of our business at Crimson is made up of a Microsoft digital transformation consultancy, and I have colleagues who are all very much more technical than myself, I'm pleased to say, who shape and work in solutionizing with a lot of our customers around higher education, housing, house building, housing associations, etc., etc. So we were established in 2001. Some of you, such as Laura and a few others on the call today, have known the business for many, many years, and we've grown organically like many businesses do. And as I said, we specialize in both IT recruitment, but also CIO search services from a recruitment proposition. And then we are also an IT solution provider and Microsoft partner. Moving quickly on, we're obviously part of a group of companies, and Nash Squared is our parent company. Some of you may know Harvey Nash, who are a traditional recruitment company like Crimson, but Nash Squared was formed as an umbrella, if you like, a parent company to all of the brands that you see below there. I'm not going into too much detail on that, but happy to pick that up with anyone on an individual level if you want any support with anything you're doing at the moment. So the Women in Tech event, just moving swiftly on, was set up actually as an in-person event, and we are looking at some point in the future to maybe host a couple of more in-person events when the time's right. And we've got an innovation conference coming up in November. For those IT leaders and yourselves, very welcome to attend that. But the Women in Tech event was very much set up to really sort of share knowledge, share thoughts, share discussions. There's open discussions, no judgment, and we offer to introduce insightful guest speakers to really help open up people's eyes really to what can sometimes be quite a daunting world as an IT leader, whether you're a woman in tech or whether you're sort of looking at your career and thinking, how can I get to that next rung, if you like, or where's my inspiration? So what we like to do is share lots of ideas, lots of insights, lots of journeys, lots of stories of people who hopefully will give you a few hints and tips along the way and help find solutions to some of your challenges or opportunities, as one may say. And we like to have fun, and obviously it's a good way of networking and introducing yourself to a like-minded community as well. So our guest speaker, I'll move swiftly on, is Catherine Church. Catherine has been part of our network for a while. She's also quite well linked to a few people I know, and seems to have a very good following herself as a digital health consultant. And Catherine is just fabulous. So I'm going to let her take over in a short while. I'm going to just try and pop her slides over to you right now. We've got Christine on the call today, Christine Deneen. Christine's our head of research and senior consultant in our CIO search team. So Christine and I will be very happy to pick up with any of you who are looking on developing your own careers, whether those sort of, looking for that next role or looking to really look at how you can develop your personal brand. So, feel free to message directly and kind of, hook up with us one-to-one if you need any additional support. But today's session will hopefully give you some insights into the world of AI in the workplace. Okay, great. So for the purpose of today, obviously, please drop any questions in the chat. Feel free to drop your, personal vanity LinkedIn if you would like to connect with others. So hopefully you can all see now the slides for the presentation for Catherine today, Women and AI. Okay, I'm going to hand you over to our very capable Catherine to introduce herself. And yeah, thank you ever so much for attending.
Brilliant. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Louise and Holly and Christine, for inviting me to talk to you this morning about a subject that I'm really passionate about, and that is the impacts and opportunities of AI on us as women in society generally and on our tech careers. And you'll notice that there's a plus after women. And for me, this is really important, and this denotes acceptance of anybody who identifies as a woman. So anyone who wants to walk in my shoes, look over their shoulder when they're coming home at night, really think carefully about where they park their car, and actually find that they're going to get paid a minimum of 20% less over their career on average, is more than welcome to be a woman. So women plus radical acceptance for me. And if we could just move on a slide, if that's okay, what I thought would be good to do today is I'll introduce myself in a minute, and then I wanted to share some observations about how we've got to where we are with AI. And there's a few kind of like broad definitions of the different types of AI, because of course it's not one thing, which may be helpful, or maybe teaching women to suck eggs. So if it is, I apologize in advance. And then look at a little bit of the opportunities and threats, because we are not impacted by AI in the same way as men are. And then think about how that impacts on us in the workplace. And then Louise is going to lead us through a bit of a group discussion. So the idea being that we can share our experience, our ambitions. Finish off this morning with some practical activities that we can take back into the workplace, and some thoughts about how we can leverage this amazing technology to make the world a better place, not just for us, but for our children and the people around us. So if we could move on. So a little bit about me. I'm a digital leader, an exec who really operates at that intersection between strategy, execution, and operations. And the way I like to work is very data driven. So I like to get under the skin of an organization, really understand how it operates today from the perspective of internal users and external users, and then work really closely with stakeholders to co-design a vision of what the future could be, and then think about how we layer the technology into that. So I'm really interested in that interface between technology and the human beings who use it. And across my career, I've worked in financial services, in utilities, in telcos. And then I thought, right, okay, time for a bit of tech for good, and moved into the NHS as the Chief Digital Officer of an integrated care system during COVID. So my first job in healthcare, my first job in the public sector, and it was a real baptism of fire. So I now work as an independent consultant, and so I work as an advisor to women's health, femtech, and a whole range of other organisations, startups and scale-ups around digital and data technology strategy. Do some fractional CDO, CTO work as well, and you'll see at the bottom there I do an awful lot of work with women in technology organisations. So parity for gender in technology is really what gets me out of bed in the morning. But anyway, enough about me. AI, if we can move on, Lou, that would be amazing. So a few things around the types of artificial intelligence. Busy slide, but I know they're going to be shared afterwards. So artificial intelligence, a whole range of different technologies moving at a pace of knots, and various forms that have different applications in business. And I'll just say a couple of words on each. And actually, if this is grandmother and eggs, then as I say, I apologize. So if we're thinking about machine learning, and in fact, when most people are talking about artificial intelligence, they're either talking about machine learning or deep learning, but machine learning using algorithms to analyze vast data sets and helping companies generate insights. So recommendation engines, probably the things that we've been used to the most often. So Amazon started recommendation engines probably about 10 years ago. So if you enjoyed this product, other people liked this product. Very often applied in fraud detection, which has a whole range of ethical implications, as I'm sure you know. Thinking then about deep learning, of which we've got natural language processing and computer vision. So a different form of AI. One is looking at language, one is looking at images. So computer vision helps image and video recognition. So that is absolutely crucial when you're looking at things like healthcare. So automation and looking at detection and diagnosis of X-rays, for example. Video recognition, so really, really important on things like autonomous vehicles. So being able to make sense of visual imagery around and turn that into actionable insights and then actions. Natural language processing, we come across this all the time now. It's probably the one that's been the most embedded in industries at the moment. So that natural interaction between humans and machines. So chatbots, so Klarna have been talking for some time now about taking 50% of their workforce out in customer services and actually having those activities carried out by chatbots that are getting more and more human-like in their interactions. And of course, when you're looking at ChatGPT, then we're interacting the agent at the front that does the prompt engineering and prompts the engine at the back end is of course a chatbot. Moving into Gen AI, so that is where we take from that simple interpretation or not so simple interpretation into actually creating new content. So looking at images, music or text, and that's using neural networks to automate some creative processes. So there we get into more problematic areas such as deep fakes, for example, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. For me, the areas that I'm really excited though is edge AI. So that really is taking the processing of data, which takes huge amount of processing power and capability, large data centers at the back end, and of course, some fairly well documented impacts on the environment, but actually looking at how we compress that and process that data on the device. So you've got mobile phones becoming more and more performant. And actually, if you're thinking about processing vast amounts of data from Internet of Things sensors, then being able to do that on the phone using Wi-Fi as opposed to having other forms of connectivity is really exciting. So you're removing that data transfer requirement. So that increases speed, it increases privacy and efficiency, which again, in the context of women's health is really important. And then just a little word about autonomous AI, whether we'll ever reach it or we reach it in a few thousand months, according to Sam Altman, which is still quite a long time, then that's actually at the frontier. So this is where we step away from having a human in the loop and we start to allow machines to make some of these decisions for us autonomously. So that was a little bit of a quick background to the types of AI and some of the business applications that we're seeing. And how AI is going to take over the world. And you'll probably see from that image, because it's probably got some spelling mistakes in there, is that was an AI generated image using ChatGPT. I think it was ChatGPT, that one. And AI is all around us. So you've probably interacted with at least 10 different forms of AI in your domestic sphere. So from autocorrect in text messages to Hey Google, to Siri, to Amazon's Alexa, using it in the domestic sphere. And we've almost been lulled into a sense of security with AI in the home as we've used it more and more. So if we think back to Facebook and Instagram 7 or 8 years ago, those really funny memes that allowed us to age ourselves or see what we'd look like as a wolf or all of those kinds of things. In fact, we were training image recognition for Facebook, for Meta as it's known now. So in fact, it's come into our world gradually over the last 10 years to the point where we're completely dependent in some ways for recommendations, for recipes, for buying bundles of products, for surge pricing, for holidays and flights. But actually what it's allowed us to do is, one, get really used to the types of technologies and how useful they are, but we're actually all AI engineers now. So I'm sure your kids, I know my nephews and nieces are all working with filters and memes on TikTok. So they're actually really used to the idea of manipulating images and manipulating text and creating their own content. And what that's meant is that we accept these solutions, which of course are stepping into our privacy bit by bit. And we're accepting those and we're demanding them. And that's coming into the workplace. So being completely immersed in AI at home means that we're accepting it more and more in the workplace. So those of you who are working with Copilot know how irritating, how useful it can be in the workplace. And in my particular area in healthcare, we're at the point where actually there's some real ethical conversations about how we say no. So for example, if you're offered a choice between a robotic surgeon for some surgery that actually at times has better outcomes than a human surgeon, then which one would you choose? And actually, would you accept to work with a surgeon that wouldn't work with a robotic capability, or in fact with some AI assistance. And this is playing out right now at the moment, especially with cardiac surgery and the insertion of stents, cardiac stents, where we can see that now the surgeons who are supported by certain types of decision-making prompts and robotizations are actually starting to get better outcomes. So we're at the point, so can we actually say no to AI, and is it ethical? If we move on, Lou, what does this mean to us as women? And I think there's a real duality here, and the impacts are not the same at all. So the first point is around economic stability. I mentioned earlier, Klarna looking to cut 50% of their customer service workforce. And these are the applications that we're seeing. So where industry is going to take this is, of course, where the economic benefit is. So we're seeing lots of entry-level jobs, customer service jobs. They will be manufacturing jobs which will get more rapidly replaced than the higher ends of the knowledge economy. And those are jobs which are predominantly delivered by women and minority groups. And what we're now seeing is where the tech bros are being a little bit more threatened by this. So artificial intelligence used for coding, used for quality control, used for deploying code, that people are starting in the tech world to get a little bit more worried about this. So that's one thing. So impact on our jobs is one thing. The thing that I find more problematic, though, is the application of AI. So as we were talking about computer vision and NLP and text creation, that content creation for deep fakes, the potential for digital harassment, and really that stepping into our personal intimate space. And there's always been a school of thought that says that porn has driven the development of the internet. So actually a huge amount of money flowed into the internet for the dissemination of porn more easily. And again, a same school of feminist thought that actually says the amount of money that is going in, and this is a fact you can check, the amount of money that is going into creating deep fakes, the amount of energy that's going into revenge porn, which are things that impact on women more so. And the technology gives anybody anywhere in the world the ability to create images of women, to superimpose women's and celebrities' heads on deeply unpleasant content. And actually, it's very hard to hide from that type of digital harassment. And that doesn't tend to happen to men. So I think that's one for us to have a think about as well. And then the final bit here is around data security. So Roe v. Wade, which is, of course, the legally enshrined right in America to abortions, has been overturned. So the ability for women, and in fact women's desire to track intimate data like fertility, like periods, like contraception, has reduced massively, because there is also always that threat of that data being shared with other parties. And in fact, you'll see at the moment, Flow, which is the largest menstrual health content provider and tracking application, is being sued in Canada and in Florida because they shared data of women's sexual activities with Facebook. So there's a real security there. The more data we have, and the more it is in these data centers, then the more there is the ability for that to be intercepted and shared either maliciously or by intent as a commercial driver. But it's not all doom and gloom. I really don't think it is. I think there's a huge opportunity. So I mentioned earlier the democratization of artificial intelligence. So I imagine that pretty much all of us are using ChatGPT or Copilot pretty much on a daily basis. And I think that's really exciting. And as we get into that a little bit more, creating images, creating content, writing your slides, women being able to, and in fact anybody being able to step in and understand. I did a prompt engineering course in 6 weeks, and it's really exciting new technology that's easier and easier to learn. So more and more of us can step into that. And in the women's health and the femtech environment, Then there's women designing for women. So there's more and more women creating really amazing startups and technology companies, which is absolutely brilliant. And that ranges from bras that can detect cancer all the way through to recommendation engines for a whole range of products and avatars that help with fitness and personal training. So women are stepping in and taking opportunities and building amazing businesses on the back of them. And then coming back to healthcare, then diagnosis, predictive screening, liquid biopsies, personalized medicine based on our genes and the types of genetic profiles of the cancers that we suffer for. All of those are huge opportunities from AI. So I suppose what I would say there is that we have this chance to step in, to grab this technology and to really turn it into something that will help us as women.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm just going to allow you to pause for a moment there, because you absolutely are in full flow, and there's just so much information, and the passion coming through in your voice is incredible. I just wanted to pause there just to give you a breath, but also just to ask if anyone has got anything to ask with regards to any of that there. I mean, obviously, you know, in the workplace and how we apply AI, is something obviously Catherine's sort of really getting us thinking about here, but really just in 6 bullet points to really capture just the sheer impact of everything going on out there is significant. Lydia, yes. You're on. Oh, there we are. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. I think first of all, it's just great to really hear from you today, Catherine. It's amazing to hear
really
AI about a woman, from a woman talking about AI in the depths you are reaching today. I really appreciate that, because I think AI is still in a position where it's still male-led. And as you present, I keep thinking, is this going to be another technology where women are left out of the process because of the barrier to learning? And it's interesting you touched on generative AI and how easy it is to learn AI, and I think it's music to my ears hearing that, because I think whilst the technology is great, if we as women don't get in on the race to start contributing, I mean, you mentioned algorithm training, that's already years in the making, and it's gone quite far now. So I don't know how much, we can change by saying, we want to be involved now. But I guess my question is this really going to make a difference for women, or is this just going to be another technology that disenfranchises women from the workplace and further broadens that gap of female participation in technology? But I guess it's the wider impact. Again, our whole lives are being shaped by AI, from when we leave the house, what we buy, what we consume, what even for people who have children, our children consume. So is this going to be something else again that becomes something that hurts women's prospects at work and at home, or is this something we can really take advantage of?
That is a brilliant question, and thank you for being so kind. That's fantastic. Lou, can we go to the next slide, because that is exactly what I wanted to talk about next. And I think the answer is it's up to us. It is genuinely up to us. And this is a really good report that Boston Consulting Group put out, and I put the link to it there beneath. And actually, when we look at how women are adopting AI in the workplace, there's some really stark differences, exactly to your point there, Lydia. And what we find is that women in senior positions in technology, so if you think 2 groups, women in technology, women who are impacted by technology, and I don't know which group you're in, but if you look at women in technology careers, then women right at the top, so the CDOs, CIOs, CTOs, chief data officers, are adopting AI faster than their male counterparts, which is really exciting, because what they are doing is creating those very visible role models, and they're actually looking at the technology and looking at how they apply that technology with, I would say, a much more empathetic and a much more ethical lens. There's also another driver for that is that lots of women at very senior leadership positions feel that they have to be on top of everything. So they have to have an answer. They have to be right at the very beginning. And they have to be seen to be experts in a way that men wouldn't. But regardless, 17% more women at very senior levels of tech careers are adopting AI. But actually, what's really important is that then as you start to go down the organization in seniority, then that advantage that we have disappears. So actually, when you get to junior tech roles, of which there's not very many, because it's bloody hard to be a woman in tech and raise a family and get paid less and be discriminated against in the workplace. I'm generalizing, it's not like that for everybody, but for a lot of women, then actually when you get to the lower levels, then women don't adopt AI quite as much. And there's a really, really important driver for that. And that comes to your question, Lydia. And there's 3 reasons in the main that this study has found is, and we can go to the next slide, Lou, actually, is that, so 3 things. So one, most women or a lot of women don't have the time. So they go to work, they do their job, and then tech bros will do meetups in the evening, they'll do meetups at the weekend, they'll have time to play around. I don't have kids, so I had time to play around and do a prompt engineering course. But if you get home and you've picked your kids up and you've got to do the dinner and then you've got all the chores on top of that, when do you get the time to play with these technologies? And the workplace isn't giving that time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, so that's how you build your skills to say, actually, I've got skills here. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to volunteer for for a project or for some time. And then the second thing around that is risk tolerance. So how open are women to playing with things in the workplace? And there's a real difference in organizations that have really clearly set out policies around AI specifically and generative AI in particular, because you're getting closer towards that risk frontier there of doing something and letting a machine get closer to an autonomous decision. So actually, the organizations that have clear policies in place that guide how you use these technologies, then women are much more likely to adopt those. And it might be because we're not as risk-takey. It could be that we're more ethical, or it could be that if we make a mistake, then people come down on us with a ton of bricks. And I don't know what the answer to that is. It will differ between organizations. And I think the other thing that this found is the awareness of impact. So there's stats all over the place. This particular study said that about 55% of all employees will need retraining as a result of Gen AI. And actually, men seem to understand and grasp that, and then will go out and train and spend the time in the evenings at weekends equipping themselves with those skills, so they're less taken by surprise. And women tend not to do that. So there's an awareness piece of, what could this do to my job? What could this do to my job? So therefore, what skills do I need? And how do I advocate in the workplace that I get those skills in work time, not in my own time, because I probably don't have it. So I thought those were 3 really interesting kind of drivers for why women risk being left behind in the workplace, and some of the things that we might be able to do to get ourselves on the front foot.
Thanks, Catherine. I'm just going to ask our colleague Ollie Sinclair, actually, who's on the call. He's our Deputy CTO at Crimson, and has got some significant insights into the whole area of data and AI himself. And I just wondered, Ollie, whether on the back of what Catherine's just shared, and obviously in response to Lydia's question around AI in the workplace, whether you have any additional thoughts or any questions or prompts for Catherine on this point. Are you there?
Yeah, sure.
Hello.
Sure. Yes, I am. Hi.
Welcome.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, no, what a fascinating conversation. It really is quite thought-provoking. There's some areas that I'll be honest, I hadn't really thought about. It's certainly around sort of the impact on certain types of employees, and how AI or the transformation into democratize generative AI is really going to affect different people in different ways. One thing that is really interesting is, I guess, as a business leader, the core of my question would really be, as a business leader, what is it that we can do to level that playing field to make sure that everybody has that opportunity to be able to utilize these new technologies that are coming through? I think, you know, that one of the crux of that question really is where I see certainly generative AI, the way in which we're interacting with computers at the moment, it is fundamentally going to change. And I know Microsoft talk a lot about this around the conversational framework, skills framework, or what people call prompt engineering. And one of the core elements of prompt engineering is the fact that you don't talk to the AI engine the same way as you talk to, say, Google. Google, you sort of type something in, it's very short, it's very quick, you need to be quite precise, but you can't give it an essay that it really just gives you, you know, you really need to be quite specific. Whereas with generative AI, it seems as though a lot of these models, the more information you give it, the more colloquialisms that you add into your speech or your prompts, the better the results seem to come out from these large language models. And I guess the question is, you know, what skill sets do everybody need to be thinking about, and how can we sort of expose those nuances or those tricks about how we use generative AI in the workplace so that everybody can benefit from it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think it's, as with everything, it's not so much about skills as it is about culture and opportunity. So if we go back to those three issues of, do women understand what the impact could be? In fact, does the workforce as a whole understand what the impacts could be? Have we had the opportunities to look at our jobs, think about our skills, and think about actually how Gen AI might be impacting on us in the future? And I think that's a really interesting conversation to have as an organization, because if you think about the reasons why a lot of digital transformation fails, is that, you know, people aren't included in the design of solutions. It lands on top of them for priorities which are employer priorities and not employee priorities, and it's done too. So if we start having those conversations about, as a business, how could we deploy this? What does it then mean to my team, my skills, and then design then the skills program that we need from that. That addresses that awareness point, which is really, really important. But then it also means that whatever skills that we're going to put in place, and prompt engineering is one thing, but I think we're almost beyond prompt engineering, because the agents, the interfaces, the chatbots are getting so good now that those skills are kind of like much more in the background. But then it's creating the time to play with these skills in the workplace, in work time, because women don't have time. We don't have time, and we also maybe don't have the confidence, and we also don't know where to look. And a lot of this training can either be written in ways that is a bit scary, or it costs money, which quite often we don't have. So it's creating that time to do that training in the workplace, I would say. And then the final thing is that risk tolerance piece. So are we making it safe to have a play with this? Or has it so constrained that actually women are scared to have a go, or people generally are scared to have a go because they think they might be making mistakes or unethical conversations? And then my final point would be to really, really have a look at the proof of value projects that we're putting on, and actually reaching out to women to take part in them, because quite often women won't put themselves forward because they're really busy. So make that space and make sure that your proof of value pilots have got equal representation, or probably more women, I would say.
Thank you, Catherine. That's absolutely great. Ollie, thanks for that question and the insights into your own experience there as well. And a lot to take away, I think, for us as an organisation there on what Catherine's saying around that time needed to really get that exploration and innovation. Laura, you've got a question as well.
So not so much a question, but taking on the point about it needs to come from within the organisation, and we need to kind of step forward as women to help with that. There is quite a bit. I went to a workshop with Microsoft last Wednesday, and there is quite a lot of funding out there for AI programs, as they've got all sorts of different streams of programs. And I think that's a really great way, when we as women don't have that much time, to make it look like we're leading something but getting a lot of help in the background. So if you have if you've got some ideas in your organisation but you don't really know whether they'll fly, there is help in Microsoft. And they've also woken up to this point about more education in organisations, and they're starting to run something called a promptathon, which is helping people to understand how they can prompt AI and make use of that more. It's mainly for very large groups of people, so they're looking for groups of about 40 people. But if you're working in an organisation and you've got customers you think that might benefit, they'd be open to running those. So just taking on that point about us stepping forward and bringing the organisation with us, I think those are good ways of trying to do that.
Laura, that's great. You've always got some nuggets up your sleeve, haven't you? Absolutely brilliant. And I think that's the key, isn't it, really, to Catherine, your point, allowing and finding the time, but it's making that time and making it mean something and making it valuable to people. Thank you. Okay, let's move on with the... There you go, Catherine. I've prompted you on now. We're obviously in the discussion mode now, but do you want to just sort of steer any sort of deep thoughts for people whilst we've already had a few discussion points there, which is great, but do you want to sort of enhance that at all, Catherine?
Well, I think that's the thing, and lots of women that I talk to, and employers that I talk to, they tend to have their proof of values being quite remote from the business, and a lot of these are tech questions. If you ask a technologist to solve a problem for you, they'll find a tech answer to it. So they tend to be, here's the technology, how can I create something from it, as opposed to what's the business problem and where is the opportunity, and then how do I gather the right group of people around me to answer that, and of that, technology is going to be a big part of it. So that would be one thing that I think we could all think about. And to the point made earlier, putting our hands up and actually volunteering for that, because otherwise it'll end up being done in IT by the usual suspects and get imposed on the workplace, which, Lydia, does tend to mean that women could get left behind by that. But I suppose I'd be really interested to know from the women here what their experience has been of how AI is being implemented in the workplace. Are you part of those conversations? Do those three issues of confidence, access to training, time, inclusion resonate with you? That would be the discussion I would love to have.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, we've got Helen who's just raised her hand. So what's your experience being of AI in the workplace, Helen? And have you got anything to add to the discussion? Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
It's all right. Sorry for the background. I've just realised it's a company background. Stupid thing to put on.
Don't worry, it's fine.
But yeah, so I actually work in a company called Symphony AI, as it says in the background. So obviously AI is really key in what I do. But one of the things that is kind of, I guess, pertinent to me is making sure that the seeded information that's being used by the AI is suitable for everyone. So, there's been examples of AI being used for recruitment, and they've looked at the AI is being used to look at the ideal candidate. Well, in a tech role, the ideal candidate is going to be male, so therefore an AI bot, or whatever you want to call it, will choose a male candidate. What can we do, I guess, is my thought, to change that? Because so much data, whether it's about a tech role or whether it's just what's on the internet, there's much more about men than there are about women. So how do we change that seeded data? And sorry, that's kind of how it's affecting my workplace, but it's not quite. It's another question that kind of had in my mind.
No, great question.
I think that's really, really, I mean, it's so pertinent, isn't it? And I think one of the really scary things is that we're training AI on the internet, which is a bit of a, it's a bit of a sewer, isn't it? And a cesspit of data, full stop. There were some incredibly interesting discussions about this at Big Data London last week. I don't know if you were there, Helen. And some of the really interesting discussions are around policies. So actually, what is our data governance policy in organisations, and how are we embedding ethics in data governance from the very beginning of how we're gathering data, and then when we're setting up these proof of value or we're deploying AI in our organisations, how do we go through those ethical steps of asking those exact questions? So there's a really good example. It was, I think it was Bank of America or it was JP Morgan. They deployed a mortgage calculator. And this was only about 6 or 7 years ago. And it was giving interest rates to mortgages. And it found home loans in America. And it found that Black people were getting significantly higher risk profiles and were therefore being given much higher interest rates on their offers, and women equally. And that was exactly to your point, is because in their data sets, they had seen that there may be disproportionate numbers of women or Black people from a range of minorities that were more impacted by the economic impact of COVID. So they therefore decided from that minimal data set that actually all women were a bad risk, all Black people were a bad risk, so therefore had to give. So, and that is about interrogating and having the policies in place and the inclusion in place to have diverse steering groups, which is why women need to put their hands up and be part of the leadership of these programs and the governance of these programs, so we can ask those questions.
Wow. That's really, and I think you mentioned that word culture before, and it can be overused and underused in so many forms, but that's a real big example of where that culture and that D&I piece is so prevalent and is so important, because it really steers the conversations to ask those questions. Thank you for that. Thank you, Helen. Has anyone else got any thoughts on that, or has anyone got anything else they'd like to share about their own personal experiences? And again, like Lydia said earlier, it's quite a new thing that we're all hearing, and we're kind of feeling a little bit kind of pushed to having to listen and talk about this as a subject, but it is going to really quickly start to be, I mean, it already is a huge part of our lives, but from a workplace perspective, most definitely. In terms of the sort of time given to innovation, to playing around with tech, does anyone have any hints or tips as to their own organizations and ways that they've introduced allowing, I think within Crimson, we've got a lot of core development time. So we give people personal development time as part of their working week. Sometimes those steer towards certain certifications and things that they're looking to try and achieve from a tech world. So I don't know how much of my colleagues' time actually is spent actually truly playing around and exploring stuff as such, but I know we actively encourage it where we can. Lydia?
Find the mute button again. Yeah, yes. I think one thing we've recently implemented in our business is lunch and learn. So just having mini bite-sized sessions. And I particularly really promote AI in the business because I want to demystify it. So I want to say, look, AI is here. It's not that technical, scary subject, but of course, being somebody very technical, sounds a bit like a fraud saying, it's not that technical, it's okay, but I've been technical all my life. So coming from me, it does sound like, oh, is that really, really true? And can anyone really learn this and pick it up? And I say, look, we've got generative AI, you've got prompt engineering. You don't need to be into the coding aspect of this to get the benefits. But I think one practical way, even have been someone who is known as technical in the business, I still have to stand up and step forward, because when the AI committee was set up, it was all guys in the business. And I said, no, hang on a minute, I am here. This is my area. This is an area of interest for me. So of course, I've got very limited knowledge about AI, I would say. That's my own assessment, but other people say, well, you've got a lot of knowledge. And I said, well, not according to me, because I realize what a vast field AI is. So I think being visible has helped, and me putting my hand up to say, I am here as a woman in the business. This is something I'm interested in. I champion this session internally. I don't know if any of my colleagues could join us this morning. So just creating those opportunities to have these conversations about AI, I find has been helpful. It's not an easy fix. It's a long-term investment, both personally on my part and on the part of the business as well, because culture isn't something which changes overnight. So it's the long drag to say to people, hey, here are some quick wins. You can use Copilot. You can get on that 6 weeks course. But it's not just saying you can get on that 6 weeks course. It's also making the time for people to do that. So I manage a team, and I create the opportunities for people to go on courses, and I challenge them, say, look, don't just say you're going to have a training course, book the time in, schedule it, block it out in your calendar. Don't bank on being able to do something in the evenings, on weekends, particularly if you've got a family. Just block that time out, and I will help you as a manager to push back to say, you're on training and you've got work you need to do. So that's what we do as a business, because that's supported from our SLT and directors as a business policy. So that time and space for learning is there. But on my part as a manager, I still have to push and say, well, you do have to go up and get the job done when you've created that time. So take the opportunity, learn, and of course use that in your job where you find it applicable.
That's brilliant. And you've hit the nail on the head. Being that visible role model is so crucial, and being able to show your vulnerabilities and your own personal apprehension around things, but knowing that it's very much present and using the opportunities is really important.
Yeah, and I think it's that thing of I'm not afraid to take some risks. I'm not afraid to say, well, I know this, but maybe not quite as much. So there's that thing of, women being called out because you're expected to know everything. I'm okay with not knowing everything, but I also value the little that I know and what I bring to the table, because sometimes what I think might be little and insignificant might just be what's needed for the job.
Absolutely, and strikes a chord with many people, probably, and encourages people to really themselves speak up when they're thinking, oh, okay, it's not just me wondering what the hell this is all about. Catherine, have you got anything to add on what Lydia said then? Brilliant. And Lydia, can I just say, fantastic that you're already doing so much, because I think we can all learn a lot from that. We have lunch and learn sessions within our business, but to be fair, often they're overshadowed sometimes, possibly with so much other stuff, because there is just so much stuff going on all the time, and that order of priority is so hard to get right, isn't it? But I think just putting yourself out of your comfort zone, like you've shared there, and really speaking up and saying, look, I can help, and actually I don't have all the answers, but let's try and work them out, I think is a really valuable takeaway. Catherine, have you got any thoughts there as well, or any help for Lydia as she's flying the flag?
Yeah, no, I think that's really important, isn't it? As managers in organisations, supporting everybody around us, but recognising that for women it's going to be a little bit more difficult, because we've got that maybe a bit of a lack of confidence around technology. I mean, there's incredibly scary stats. Those of you who have kids, girls by the age of 8. Have a majority of them have decided that tech careers are not for them. So I mean, it's terrifying, isn't it? So we're still with the next generation, raising generations of girls who think that tech is not for them. By the time they get into the workplace, even if they're not in tech careers, and most of us don't need to be in tech careers now to be using technology on an almost, like every hour basis. And actually, if we can't build that confidence and that curiosity to really play with the technology, then we are going to be even more disproportionately impacted. So I think the Microsoft putting on all of those really helpful academies is brilliant. We saw that with when Teams came in during COVID, there was a whole range of learning to help people make that transition, and it's a transition of the same magnitude, I think, moving to a technology supported workplace. But the other thing I was going to say that I think is really, really important is just being mindful about what we use in our personal lives. So if we now think that everything that we're doing online is being tracked in some way, and sometimes that's for good and our benefit, and I'm not being a conspiracy theorist here in the slightest, but if we think about the apps that we sign up to and thinking about really kind of like advocating for much more clarity and transparency as to how our data is being used. And then we can all do that. We can all on any of the social media platforms and their customer service channels, just really ask for an explanation of what they're doing with our data and what we're consenting to. And I think for women, that's really important. What are we consenting to? What data are people keeping? Because that data, to the point made earlier, if we're sharing that data and there's more visible data around women, then the algorithms are going to get better because they've got better quality data. But actually, if that's being shared in a way that our consent is not explicit, then I think that's also a real risk. So stepping away from the workplace to our kind of more personal spheres, but I think that's really important as well.
Brilliant. Wow. Okay. Has anyone got any final questions for Catherine? I mean, honestly, I feel like we could talk about this all day. It's so fascinating. There's so much that you've made me really just open my eyes to, and already some recommendations for customers I'm talking to. You know, they're looking at their workforces and teams and wondering how they can develop certain things within their business. And they've got all the skills and talent there. It's just like you say, it's just teasing that out and adopting the codes of practice and giving sort of specific time to that, which I think is invaluable. So I've just moved you on for the final slide for your presentation, Catherine, which you've already highlighted. I think that proof of value is a big challenge for people sometimes to really hit the nail on the head with, but like Lydia and yourself both shared, bringing together the right people to help contribute to that proof of value and getting that buy-in from, you know, the senior leadership team and all the way through the organization is so important, isn't it, really, across all areas, like you say, because it has a real impact and influence across all areas. And I think that hesitancy of people to try things new, but also potentially be a bit cynical towards things, can potentially impact on a culture if it's not, you know, if you don't bring forward the opportunity for people to share those fears as well. Is there anything else you want to talk through in what you've just said? I think you've just covered a lot of it, but the inclusivity piece is a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. Is the start with the why. So what's the value of the technology? Again, I think women are a bit more discerning with our time. We don't tend to go down tech rabbit holes because we're too busy and we've got other stuff to do. So thinking about what the value of the technology is and making sure that it's useful to us in our jobs, in our personal lives is really important. And I think that's a huge benefit that we will bring to any proof of value. So actually being part of that initial design and just going like, why are we doing this in the first place? I think is really valuable. And if it's useful, then more women will get involved as well. But I just saw that Laura had asked a question about how do you keep up to date in an area with such fast-paced progress. And to be honest with you, I don't have an answer to that because things are moving so fast and they tend to be moving in the engineering space. So I'm in a few WhatsApp groups and I like to play around with stuff, but I've got the time to do that. But I would say there are loads of newsletters. There's loads of podcasts around AI. So, you know, on the way to work, listening to a whole range of podcasts around AI, and there's loads around the ethics, the technology, the engineering, the application. And that's probably what I would say is that if there is a little bit of clear space, then get immersed and read and listen.
That's amazing. And oh, sorry, Helen. Oh, That's okay. I think we had Helen on off mic there. It's okay. Yeah, no, we as a business encourage. I mean, it's difficult to get people into the workplace sometimes when you've got a hybrid working culture, but we tend to have team days last Thursdays of the month where we bring together lunches and you know, bring forward, you know, opportunity for people to do those kind of water cooler moments as we used to discuss them in the old days, as I call it, and actually allowing people to just talk and just listen and have those opportunities to share a bit of lunch and just discuss things as well. And like you say, Catherine, finding those opportunities when you are traveling, commuting, you know, even taking the kids on a day out, this, that and the other, but you know, they've always usually got their AirPods in. I don't know whether you all agree with me, but often I find myself talking to myself in the car journeys these days. So there's lots of opportunities to have those podcasts, like you say, and maybe open a bit of a kind of, you know, family discussion on it possibly as well, because the kids, like you say, are so familiar with and so comfortable with all of the things. I mean, I laughed or smiled earlier when you mentioned TikTok. The amount of times my daughter comes into the kitchen and asks me to get involved in some new thing that I've got to try and, like, you know, throw myself about for. But no, that's brilliant. Thank you. It's 9:29. For me personally, that has been an absolutely fantastic session. I'm just going to finish by stop sharing your slides if you don't mind, Catherine, and just bringing this in. So I think Holly's just sharing a poll with us now. So how useful have you found today's webinar? Extremely useful, somewhat useful, not at all. We're really grateful for any feedback you can put forward with this. It has been recorded, but we obviously desensitize any personal information and any of the information shared today. So please be assured of that. Diane, thank you for that celebration clap there. I agree. I think it's been absolutely brilliant, and hopefully it's given us all lots of inspiration and lots of ideas and thoughts to take into the workplace or take into our customer conversations, or obviously just personal colleague ones as well. I'll just quickly share one final piece. Let's have a look where we are, and just to give everyone opportunity. So there's the poll. We have also got coming up in November, mid-November, an innovation conference, all things around data and AI. Lots of the things discussed today, I'm sure, will be coming up in that conference. Catherine, obviously hope you can attend, but it is free to register. We are limited on spaces and numbers now, but we do have some fantastic guest speakers joining us for that conference coming up on the 14th of November. So if you are an IT leader, if you are looking to you know, surround yourself with good people and build your network, then please do register to attend, and hopefully you'll get a secure spot. And lastly, obviously a bit of information, as I mentioned here, we've got a QR code there for Catherine, myself, and also Crimson as a whole. We do have lots of jobs and opportunities at the moment that we as a recruitment business are promoting. We also have an army of fantastic technical specialists within our solutions business who will be glad to you know, include themselves in your network, I've no doubt. And there's so many you know, opportunities, like Catherine said, to really get involved with groups and forums. So thank you everybody for joining this morning. I really appreciate your time. Catherine, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. And you know, if anyone wants to like or share, obviously we'll be sending the slides and the presentation as Holly mentioned at the beginning of the session with everyone who's attended today. Thank you so much. Really fabulous. And yeah, reach out to Catherine should you want any support within your organisations. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Have a really great day.